Hi, I was just listening to Paul's, I don't know if it's his latest video, recent video about natural law, where he talks about Joe Rigney as well as other things. And Joe Rigney is talking about natural law and the Tao, that's sort of set up by C.S. Lewis's Abolition of Man. And I just sort of am trying to insert myself into the conversation, and specifically I want to bring in a little bit of the Tao Te Ching, and then a little bit of the Book of Job, and also Peterson's recent conversation with Temple, what's her name? Temple Grandin, which was really good. I guess I'll just play this clip first of Joe Rigby to kind of get going about natural law and the Tao. So here we go.
That I want to drill in on. It's rooted in in C.S. Lewis, and here's the major claim. The three worlds framework is fundamentally about what C.S. Lewis called the Tao. That's the major claim. It's fundamentally about what C.S. Lewis called the Tao, and the rest of my time is going to be kind of unpacking what I mean by that. So what is the Tao? Tao is spelled T-A-O. In case you're wondering, my kids, I heard me talking.
All right, so that's the first part. The second clip is Paul kind of summarizing what Rigby's been talking about in the video. I'll just play this short clip.
Even though both of them will continue to assert that there is an order to the world that expresses itself in modernity and reality. And again, neither are getting into, there's sort of a threat, a hazard here. Okay, if you step away from the Tao, if you step away from the Logos, what will happen? Well, there'll be uncreation, there'll be undao, there'll be anti-logos, and what? And in other words, things will become undone. And again, there's sort of this threat behind, but it's not really asserted. And this.
Okay, so what's coming to mind immediately is sort of the conversation about the spirit of finesse and the spirit of rigor. And I feel like the natural law here, especially, Rigby does this, sort of is sort of insinuating that the natural law is this sort of spirit of rigor that is imposed on us by the outside world. And there's some truth to that because of the sort of harshness of reality. But it it misses a lot when you frame things that way, and Paul was definitely keying in on this. Let me play this one last clip. I really want to get back to this reality becoming undone if we, what did Paul say? If we step away from the Tao, if we step away from the Logos, what will happen is uncreation. Things will be undone. Because this gets right into the Book of Job. Because Job, I think, fits into this conversation really well, because in the very beginning, he is one with the Tao, so to speak. He's one. He is totally working well with the natural order of things, with the natural law, and what happens at the very beginning of the Book of Job is it seems like, or what happens is God allows this catastrophe to come upon him. Now the question is, what aspect of the natural order is that? Well, and I think that's the connection to Christ that Rigby doesn't ever make. He sort of puts the Tao and natural law in terms of this sort of rigor, this judgment, and Peterson does this too. This sort of harsh suffering that then and Rigby says, well, then the gospel is this good news in response to that. So I don't. It's not quite. It is that in some ways, but it's not quite that simple. Okay, so let me play this last clip.
The Tao is very much connected with, let's say, God number one, the Irenic God. This is the structure of reality. This natural law is sort of parallel to laws of nature, let's say. And so then to go against it, you wind up kicking against the goads. You wind up in trouble with this. But he's not really going there here in this talk quite yet.
Okay, so that sort of Paul saying a little bit better what I was trying to say. Now I'd like to play like a couple clips from the actual Tao Te Ching, because I think I don't know, I just want to play this because it's in sort of stark contrast to the type of thing that is coming to mind when I'm hearing Rigby talk about the Tao and the natural laws. So here's a couple clips.
Heaven is eternal. The earth endures. Why do heaven and earth last forever? They do not live for themselves only. This is the secret of their durability. For this reason, the sage puts himself last and so ends up ahead. He stays a witness to life, so he endures. Serve the needs of others, and all your own needs will be fulfilled. Through selfless action, fulfillment is attained. The supreme good is like water, which nourishes all things without trying to. It flows to low places loathed by all men. Therefore, it is like the Tao. Live in accordance with the nature of things. In dwelling, be close to the land. In meditation, go deep in the heart. In dealing with others, be gentle and kind. Stand by your word. Govern with equity. Be timely in choosing the right moment. One who lives in accordance with nature does not go against the way of things. He moves in harmony with the present moment, always knowing the truth of just what to do.
Okay. Here's another clip.
If you want to be a great leader, you must learn to follow the Tao. Stop trying to control. Let go of fixed plans and concepts, and the world will govern itself. How do I know this is so? Because in this world, the greater the restrictions and prohibitions, the more people are impoverished. The more advanced the weapons of state, the darker the nation. The more artful and crafty the plan, the stranger the outcome. The more laws are posted, the more thieves appear. Therefore the sage says, I take no action, and people are reformed. I enjoy peace, and people become honest. I do nothing, and people become rich. If I keep from imposing on people, they become themselves. When the ruler knows his heart, the people are simple and pure. When he meddles with their lives, they become restless and disturbed. Bad fortune is what good fortune leans on. Good fortune is what bad fortune hides in. Who knows the ultimate end of this process? Is there no norm of right? Yet what is normal soon becomes abnormal. People's confusion is indeed long-standing. Thus the master is content to serve as an example and not to impose his will. He is pointed, but does not pierce. He straightens, but does not disrupt. He illuminates, but does not dazzle. In governing people and serving nature, nothing surpasses thrift and moderation. Restraint begins with giving up one's own ideas. This depends on virtue gathered in the past. If there's a good store of virtue, then nothing is impossible. If nothing is impossible, then there are no limits. If a man knows no limits, he is fit to lead. This is the way to be deeply rooted and firmly planted in the Tao, the secret of long life and lasting vision.
Okay. As you can already sort of tell, hopefully, there's a stark contrast between sort of the rigorous natural law of Rigby and the Tao of the Tao Te Ching. And I think that needs to be well pointed out. So things get a little interesting with, well, I want to get into Peterson and Temple Grandin, but things get interesting with the Book of Job because, and me and Sherry did a really long series going through the entire Book of Job, if anyone's interested. But so we have Job, who is basically at one with the Tao in the beginning, and then the Tao sort of seems to give in to Satan, but that's not what's happening. Like people or take a bet or be manipulated by Satan, but that's not what's happening. God in the Book of Job is sort of not resisting the accusations, and the question always is like, why? Why doesn't he? And the answer is well, because he allows the accusations to move forward, and then the basic suffering of Job. We move at the beginning of the Book of Job. We have an accuser. At the end of the Book of Job, we have the mediator. And this is, I think, key, because the entire Book of Job is how do you make that transition? Like it's a transformative thing in heaven and on earth, and God is sort of as it, Paul talks about it as the arenic God, but you can't, like, it's not helpful in this way, because it's you have to think about it as the Tao that the Tao Te Ching is talking about, that's not resisting, that is serving everything. So the God who creates is the God who serves his creation. And one example, so like in Job 4, Job's friend Eliphaz brings up this example, talking about those, basically the wicked. He says, "By the breath of God they perish, and by the blast of his anger they are consumed. The roar of the lion, the voice of the fierce lion, the teeth of the young lions are broken." And this is Eliphaz's worldview, is these evil creatures who are preying on animals. And he's using the lion as a metaphor for the wicked. And compare that to what God says about the lion. So God appears at the end of the Book of Job in a whirlwind and talks to Job, and God says in 38, at the end of chapter 38, "Can you hunt the prey for the lion, or satisfy the appetite of the young lions, when they crouch in their dens or lie in wait in their thicket?" And this is God serving the lion. He's not breaking their teeth. And this is again stated in Psalm 104, which is kind of a companion psalm for God's speech in the book of Job. It says, Psalm 104:21, the young lions roar for their prey, seeking their food from God. And the Tao, the God of the natural law, is one of is constantly serving, and pouring himself out. Now we have the problem of suffering and all that, but maybe I should get into Peterson and Temple Grandin. So they're talking about ways there. She was talking about how she thinks visually, and she thinks in pictures, and she doesn't think in abstract pictures. So like, I forget the categories she used. She divided up visual thinking into two different categories. She really thinks mechanically, like how things like work, and she thinks specifically. She doesn't have real abstract categories. She thinks in specific instances. So one example she used was she doesn't think of a church steeple in the abstract. She thinks of specific church steeples. And then when she has enough examples, she can see the similarities and make categories for them, but she doesn't have a visualization for the category. So Peterson then talks about how he thinks, and he was talking about his thought process, and this is that.
Let me ask you, when I'm thinking something through, now I can think in pictures, and if I'm building something or trying to design something to build, then I tend to think in pictures. But I would say 90% of the time, my proclivity is to think in words. And I would say, in part, that's because my word thinking is so dominant, it just suppresses the image thinking. And so a lot of my thinking, I would also say, takes the form of something like internal argumentation. So I'll ask myself a question, I'll think up an answer in words, and then I'll think up a bunch of reasons why that answer isn't sufficient, and then I'll conduct an internal argument. And that's occupying me continually, like 16 hours a day, nonstop. And it's been like that ever since I was 2 years old, except for those times, let's say. So, yeah, so how do you conduct internal arguments, or like what accounts for the... So part of the creativity in my thinking is the outcome of these arguments. But you're thinking in pictures, so you're not having internal arguments.
Nope.
What's the stream of your thought like?
Well...
Okay, so this struck me as very, very interesting, because anyone who knows the book of Job knows that after the disaster that happens to Job, almost the majority of the book is argumentation between Job and his friends, and then, well, here, let's listen to Temple's response.
Oh, and when it comes to things like designing equipment, I often will a lot of equipment design, someone gets an idea from something else. In one of my other books, I wrote about the inventor of Velcro, and he saw how burdocks stuck on his clothes. Cockleburrs and those kind of things stuck on his clothes, and that's where he got the idea for making Velcro. That would be visual thinking. The burdocks and Velcro, they've got similarities on how they stick together. In designing equipment, I can just see how it operates. I worked with welders that had 20 patents each that barely graduated from high school.
Okay. And so notice how she went right to the example of the inventor of Velcro, how he saw the cockleburrs, which are those little seeds that stick to your socks or stuff if you're walking through. All right, like it's the difference between like in the book of Job goes through this argumentation with his friends, but at the end, all of God's stuff is visual. Like it really is a vision. And God seems to bring out all these sort of practical examples, even though it's, with Behemoth and Leviathan, it's kind of fantastical, but it has this this similarity to how Temple is talking about things. If in it seems like there's a similarity between Job and Peterson and God and Temple. Let me play this last clip of Temple talking about cows.
The other thing I show people how to do is,
so just for those who don't know, Temple Grandin did a bunch of work with cattle at feedlots and processing plants where the cattle are herded into areas to be killed and processed into meat. And she may have done more for animal welfare than anybody in the world today, because even though the cattle are being killed, like she talks about in this talk about how terrible the plants were in the 70s and 80s, and how much better they are, and due to many of her reforms and her solutions. So she's talking about some of the problem solving that she did. It's very practical. There's no like high level abstraction. She just basically went to every single processing plant. So when she was working for McDonald's, she went to every single processing plant that they had. It wasn't like she just visited one or two and then abstractly came up with ideas. Like she just went to them all. So then Peterson's asking about cows, and this is very interesting.
watch your lead animal. Your lead animal will come up and stop and look at the thing they don't like. The same plant on the night shift, okay, the shadow monster wouldn't be there. The guy calls me and he goes, they go halfway up the chute and stop. All right, what do I do? I said, now bring up a nice calm bunch of cattle. Watch your leader really carefully. He'll look right at the thing he doesn't like. And there was an LED light on the corner of a building. And they took that down, and then everything worked fine.
How do you identify the leader?
Well, there's always a leader when all right, let's say I take 20 head of cattle out of a pen. There's a lead animal that walks out first. Usually one of the more bold animals, not the dominant animal. The dominant animal that pushes the others away from the feed trough, he's in the middle of the herd, or she's in the middle of the herd. But the leader will come out of the pen first, and the other cattle follow. And it's just the first animal in the group is the leader. It's that simple. You see, as we were talking about that, I'm seeing it.
Okay, so is that leader stable across instances of leadership? And is that associated with this ability to find what's anomalous and to deal with it?
Well,
anyway, so they kind of go off on this a little bit, and you can tell Peterson leaned forward there because she said it's not the dominant animal that's the leader. And so she goes on to explain that the leader's pretty constant with this if they have the same group of cattle. And then she talks about how Peterson asks some more questions, and she says that Peterson asks her what makes the leader cow, and she just is like, well, it's just the one that's less nervous. It's the one it's braver. And so that one will go forward. But if there's something in the way, like, so she talked about the LED light that the cows would stop. And so they talked about earlier about if there's like just like something an anomaly, like a bottle in the way, that the cows will stop, and so you have to remove that anomaly. Or there was a shadow that was cast at like 3 o'clock at one day as the sun moved, and the cows didn't like the shadow, so they built a roof. But the lead animal will. She was like, if you pay attention, you'll see the lead animal will look at the thing he doesn't like. And well, this is just like, as I want to try to piece this together, because Rigby's trying, and Paul points this out, Rigby's trying to figure out what's the connection between Tao and Christ. Well, Christ is the one who Christ is hidden. Christ is hidden in the Tao, in the natural world. Like, it's not obvious, but if you pay attention, you'll find him. So you'll find him in that lead cow. You'll find him in these places. And it's not obvious, because if you think about the natural order in sort of this term of rigor and violence and sort of these harsh laws, you won't see Christ. You'll see Christ as a solution to this problem. And Rigby tries to do that, and Paul points it out how it doesn't work, because Rigby's not paying attention. That's what I would say. There's a lot more I could say about this. I think the book of Job goes into this really well, because, and this will probably have to be another video, which is what Job discovers as the hidden wisdom of God. Yeah, and so maybe I'll talk about that some other time, or you could check out Sherry and mine Job podcast that we did. But probably should cut this video now so it's not too long. But thanks for listening.